Read the Bible, you'll find out that God's not too happy with what's going on around us.
Redeem the time, because the days are evil.
The Bible has not changed.
Boldly proclaim the restoration and preservation of Christian values in America.
Satan has brainwashed a whole nation.
As goes the church, so goes the nation.
Nobody's convicted of anything anymore.
And now, here's Last Call with your host, B.J. Edwards.
Well done, Mr. Anderson. New equipment on board. It's all fun.
Oh, this is crazy.
Good morning, brothers and sisters in Christ and fellow travelers. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. And in honor of Mama Jeannie, you're listening to your Last Call. We're live, at least we hope we're streaming on the internet, at WTVOradio.com and Saint Stream. Brought to you by Men United. As goes the family, so goes the church. And as goes the church, so goes the nation. If you want to call in today and talk, 614-423-4220. A lot of talk, a lot of fear about the Korean conflict.
I'm not afraid.
Wars and rumors of wars. By the way, the Korean conflict officially started in the 1950s and appears to be warming up with the heated rhetoric of President Trump and North Korea leader Kim Jong-un. The latter leader who is threatening to cancel the 1953 ceasefire. We not on?
Just keep going.
Okay.
Don't mind
new
me.
thingies. New thingies in the diggies. And again, Kim Jong-un is threatening to cancel the 1953 ceasefire that supposedly ended the Korean War. Kim Jong-un, citing a U.S.-led push for punishing UN sanctions over its recent nuclear tests and ongoing South Korean joint military drills. Well, you asked for the drills if you let off the rockets. Fearing that the Soviet Union intended to export communism to other nations, America entered into a foreign policy of containment of communism, which is why we have a North Korea and a South Korea. Just for your information, that was in the early 50s. In my humble opinion, are we live on this right here?
Yes.
Because look what we're looking at then. We need it. Okay, there you go. I was looking at the wrong screen.
I don't know why you weren't in the other one.
In my humble opinion, I really don't see anything coming from this. Just more rumors of war. What I am seeing, and let's make this, well, just hearing this doesn't mean it's going to happen. There's a lot of sound and fury happening here, but I think it's going to signify nothing. Both leaders seem to use the same big words and bang the same loud drum, but that's it. Did I say big words? I think that both Kim and Donald had the same 8th grade English teacher. If someone were to please give Donald Trump a thesaurus, that would be just tremendous, like we've never seen before. I promise you that.
I think he speaks a language level that he thinks a lot of people understand.
Yep. Meanwhile, as the war of words continues, we are spending millions of dollars weekly in a quest to prove Russia was responsible for spoiling the Democrat victory party. Money that say we could put into possibly finding a cure or treatment of all the drug abuse that's going on. Is this really a wise use of money? By the way, there is a real war that continues, and we are spending millions of dollars weekly in a quest to prove that Russia was responsible for spoiling the Democrats, but that the real war has been going on for decades, and that is the culture war, a jihad that is being waged in our own backyard, but most Americans just don't seem to notice or even care. As part of that war, an aggressive assault has been waged on the family. Again, a decades-long struggle. And we're talking about the natural family.
One man, one woman, and some children.
Thank you. For point of clarification, which Mr. Anderson is getting to, the natural family and our defense of it is an all-encompassing, diverse, multicultural movement. We're trying to reshape public opinion back to the common sense point where we recognize the critical value of the natural family as defined by nature, and a family which we inherently recognize to be, as Mr. Anderson said, one woman, one man, one pink, one blue, a monogamous, committed, lifelong relationship with their biological and or adopted children. Without exception, civilizations that ignore or try to replace the family find themselves out of business. You want living proof? Please look at today's prisons and or track the social tragedies that follow children of alternative lifestyles. It's a no-brainer, even if you're halfway looking. So are we Bible-thumping, screaming, judgmental, bigoted organization? Well, not really. We are fair and balanced. I'm talking about the Natural Family Foundation. The naturalfamilyfoundation.org is our website. We encourage you to go there. There's a lot of good information there. Although a healthy portion of our followers are religious, if that's the term to use, Mr. Anderson.
Religious?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it could be. I don't claim religion, but I claim relationship.
But in nature, religious, Christian, whatever, is not required to appreciate the value of the natural family. For example, Joe Sixpack may not be in church on the weekend, but he still knows he doesn't want his 14-year-old daughter getting pregnant nor his oldest son becoming a prom queen. That being said, the Bible does speak a bit on the subject, starting with the 5th commandment. And we're going to talk a little bit about this morning. Actually, our good friend, Coach Dave Dobbenmeyer, is going to help us bring out that point this morning. The 5th commandment that says something about not just what we should do with regard to our parents, but why we should do it. We speak to this issue again later on in the program, and especially when it comes to leadership aspect within the family. Mr. Anderson, I recently received a request to participate in a Value Voters Summit activist training. Communicate your values to change law, it suggested, which does beg the question, are workshops teaching you how to speak persuasively to your community and legislatures in what historically proven to be a vain attempt to get them to support your values, or educating yourself and others on the laws, history of our land, and other sundry issues, the main route that you think we should be focusing on? I did not say they were bad ideas. I'm just asking if they should continue to be the primary focus, which seems to be it. By the way, I'm seeing a downturn in Tea Party 9/12 movement.
I've been wondering where they went.
And I don't know whether it's because they think they got Donald Trump elected and they don't have to do anything else. I don't think that's it.
I don't either.
Yeah, I think it's got more to do with that.
More to do with what?
More to do with the fact that nothing's really happened. Nothing's really changed. I think we should be more about the business of draining the swamp, like our friends Coach Dave, Larry Richardson, and J.B. Williams suggest.
Drain the swamp. Drain, baby, drain.
In other words, instead of trying to change the spots on a leopard, maybe we should be conducting searches and finding other Donald Trumps or folks that at least support him, or leopards without spots. You've seen what happened to Obamacare, or more precisely, what did not happen to the affordable health care. So let's say that after completing your workshop and doing research, you'll be able to speak persuasively to your community and legislators to spread the support for your values. You have developed the communication tools to promote your values, how to convince others to support your values, and number 3, how to lobby legislators to support value-based laws. You can even educate them on the Constitution if you're in advanced classes, right?
Even beginning class.
And by the way, how's that working for you? What I'm suggesting is that you take that education and advocation and use it to get the right people elected and quit trying to teach the old dog new tricks. Where nothing's going to change. If your legislatures, if your senators, if your representatives, if they know that they're going to get into office and they don't have to change, they're not going to change. Change is threatening to them. We need...
It really is.
We need fresh blood. We need new people. We need leopards without spots.
They can't dump that Obamacare thing. It can't change.
So if you've given up on the Tea Party and you've given up on 9/12 type groups, why don't you talk to other people and see if you can convince them to either run for office or help you to help somebody else run for office. That is the only way this is going to change. There are people in office, I can think of my representatives, all three of them, that aren't doing me a whit bit of good. We need to drain the swamp. Just saying. By the way, last week I mentioned that the Prez was getting some honorable mention on my naughty list. And sadly this week I was shown some additional information that concerned me as well. The President joked glibly about how Vladimir Putin had saved him and the USA money by closing down a good portion of our presence in Russia. So I gather another loss of staff or two, this time in the NSC staff, is probably a welcome sight as well, right? It seems that NSC staffer Rich Higgins wrote a memo several weeks ago. When he read it, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster's fired him. In my humble opinion, Mr. McMaster should be questioned by the President. Did McMaster think the memo was false? I'm going to get into a little bit of detail about the memo. Is he part of those trying to subvert Trump's pro-American agenda? Is McMaster's? Certainly his many statements denying the Islamic character of Islamic terrorism would suggest so. McMaster's, if this information is correct, should be fired if Trump is going to have any chance of pursuing his agenda. So what was the memo? What was the subject of the memo? It was the POTUS and political warfare. Quote, the Trump administration, he stated, is suffering under withering information campaigns designed to first undermine, then delegitimize, and ultimately remove the president. Possibly confusing these attacks with an elevated interplay of otherwise normal D.C. partisan infighting and adversarial media relations, the White House response to these campaigns reflects a political advocacy mindset that is intensely reactive, severely under-inclusive, and dangerously inadequate to the threat. If action is not taken to rescope and respond to these hostile campaigns very soon, the administration risks implosion and subsequent early departure from the White House. Remember my complaint last week? The complaint this week is there's opportunities there to do something. The President signed a bill that said, in essence, he agreed that the Russians were interfering with our past election. And now if he lets McMaster's ride, and somebody that's mentioned that the problem we have in America is the ingrained politicians. Again, the fired employee happened to mention that the hard left is aligned with Islamic organizations at local, national, ACLU, BLM working with CARE and MPACT and international international levels. The opposition saw a threat to the politically correct enforcement alternatives they meticulously laid over in the past few decades. So who's the opposition that he mentions? Mainstream media, the principal mechanism, the academia, you know, the universities, the schools.
Now socialist institutions.
Mm-hmm. Training camps. The deep state, global corporatists and bankers, Democratic leadership, we'll hang in there, and Republican leadership.
Mm-hmm. Islamist ally with cultural Marxists, because as far back as the 1980s, a
properly assessed that the hard left has strong chance of reducing the Western civilizations to its benefits. Both parties, something in common. Both have opted to postmodern narrative as critical points. Islamists deploy their narrative to strategically blind and then control U.S. decision makers. This is by design and purposeful. By their own hands has been declared strategy of the Muslim Brotherhood since 1951. The strategy seeks to divide American side into the other half. Once a society has been effectively optimized, the population will have lost the old order, detest those who reduce it, among the lines of narrative inherence. After the break, we're going to have a cleanup on aisle 1 and to follow up our great conversation last week with Brenda, Dick, and Farah. Stay tuned. This information that you must have.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
This is BJ, and we are back. Hoping you're having a good weekend. Again, don't worry about this Korean talk. It's just going to be used, smoke and mirrors, to get something else accomplished that the state wants to do. This is just absolutely incredible what's going on.
I want to remind people of our call-in number, 614-423-4220,
Thank you, Mr.
4220.
Thank you. Thank you.
Like to hear from you.
Speaking of bait and switch and smoke and mirrors, the Middle East is in the process of importing to America a culture which, depending on the situational needs, can be said to be apart from religion. But then, once their political number increase, well, whoops, by golly, I guess Islam is a religion after all. Islam is also permanently intertwined in the aforementioned Middle Eastern culture. But of course, Muslims will proudly say, hey, we got all religions in our culture just like America, right? In their culture, by the way, non-Muslims are called dhimmis. And that dhimmitude is the Islamic system of governing populations conquered by jihad wars, encompassing all the democratic, ethnic, and religious aspects of the political system. The word dhimmitude describes the legal and social conditions of Jews and Christians subject to Islamic rule. The word dhimmitude comes from dhimmi, an Arabic word meaning protected. Hold that thought. Got to find out who they're protecting here. Dhimmi was the name applied by the Arab Muslim conquerors to indigenous non-Muslim populations who surrendered by a treaty to Muslims' dominations. The Muslim Empire incorporated numerous varied peoples, which had their own religions, culture, language, and civilizations. For centuries, these indigenous pre-Islamic peoples constituted the great majority of the population of the Islamic lands. Although these populations differed, they were ruled by the same type of laws based on Sharia. This similarity, which includes all regional variations, has created a uniform civilization developed throughout the centuries by all non-Muslim indigenous people who are vanquished by the jihadi war and governed by Sharia law. It is this civilization which is called dhimmitude. It is characterized by the different strategies developed by each dhimmi group to survive a non-Muslim entity in their Islamicized countries. Dhimmitude encompasses the relationship of Muslims and non-Muslims as a theological, social, political, and economic levels. It also incorporates the relationship between the numerous ethno-religious dhimmi groups and the type of mentality they have developed out of their particular historical conditions which lasted for centuries. It's an integrated system based on the Islamic theology, yada, yada, yada. So, that's the official Muslim scrubbed look at how good we are version. And this information, by the way, was taken from the Middle Eastern Islamic source. Here's quite a different view. This is from a Jew. Dhimmi, as described, by a Jew. Remember what we just said? Sounds pretty neutral, doesn't it? The Dimini is an Arabic term that refers to non-Islamic embracing population that has the shameful dishonor of living in Islamic conquered lands. In a similar manner to the Jewish reference to a non-Jew as being Goy, so much more importantly, the Dimini is distinctly subjugated second-class non-citizens, and oftentimes slave, who is subjected to the dictatorial deprivation of any legal or human rights since he is non-Muslim, permanent resident in Muslim state. Keep in mind, Dimini means protected right, but is more protecting the Muslims from ever having to intercourse with lower animals, Jews and Christians, in their Middle Eastern paradise. Throughout the earliest Islamic history, the conquered peoples, by advancing Muslim armies, were given a choice of either converting, being killed, or living as a conquered people, a Dimini. These subjugated people were suspended in time and space, for diminitude meant being barely tolerated in your disposed land. Both Jews and Christians alike suffered the disgraceful life of having their fate decided upon the whim of despotic rulers. Although a legal definition of Dimini exists, that they must pay various taxes and tolls, that they must live a second-class life and give deference to the Muslim neighbors, much of their tragic existence depended on the whims of despotic rulers and frenzied Arab mobs who denied them even the little that was given to them through Islamic law. You know, maybe blacks in the 19th and 20th century might be able to feel what Dimini means. Historically, in 622 CE, when Muhammad began his systematic conquering of pagan Arab populations and territories in the Arab deserts and peninsulas, he set up a precedent of conversion, death, or servitude, mixing war and religion. He utilized and abrogated relationships with non-Muslims to gain political and eventual territorial gains. As shrewd politicians, Muhammad took advantage of non-believing pacts to attack and subjugate populations. In 628, after a long siege of Kabar lasting a month and a half, the inhabitants surrendered under terms of a treaty known as Dimini. According to this agreement, Muhammad allowed the Jews living to continue to cultivate land on the condition that they cede half of their proceeds, but he reserved the right to cancel the agreement and expel them whenever he desired. This became the prototype of all future subjugation. Hence, making agreements and then breaking them to gain political gains became a hallmark of Muslim armies. As the Muslims grew more powerful, their holy wars spread out beyond Arabia. The jihad became a war of conquest subject to the code, which was the elimination of the infidels. Truces were allowed, but never lasting peace. The jihad became a concept that divided the world into two separate groups. One was the Dar al-Habar, the territory of war, and the other was Dal al-Islam, the territory of Islam. By the way, Muslims are in two states. They're in the state of war, or they're in state of peace, and that peace is only one. Islam rules. That's something you really need to understand. Jihad is a normal state of being in the Dal al-Harb, which will only end when the conversion of the entire world to Islam. The concept of jihad was simple, conquering the world for one true religion, Islam, translated into forced conversions, killings, taking slaves, seizing properties. This method enriched the perpetrators of the jihad, paid for their armies, and brought wealth to the Arab nations. Participating in jihad was obligatory, either by participation or by aiding in one of many manners. There were periods of tolerance which gave a small degree of security to the Diminis. However, the fanaticism which could be riled up by the clergy, has that ever happened before? Does it happen recently?
All the time.
Could change the situation in short order. And the local Muslim population became intolerant or jealous of the successes of the Dimini, then a program would ensue. Communities would find themselves evicted, women raped, exorbitant ransom placed on them, children abducted and forced to convert. In other cases, mass murders of the Dimini population was condoned. Rules would be formulated to deny Dimini due to process of law, discriminatory and restrictive dress and behavior codes would be enacted and severely enforced to reduce the Domini to a state of despair and poverty. Back of the bus, separate fountains.
Yeah, there you go. They're celebrating Rosa Parks this week, I think.
Dehumanization of the Domini was not uncommon and generally the rule. Various forms of physical abuse were common. Many times distinctive dress was specified to identify a Domini, that he or she would be unable to either mix with a Muslim or even walk in a Muslim area of a city. Other rules specified such demeaning dress code as not wearing shoes or sandals, not using certain collars, wearing stars on their clothing. Wearing stars on their clothing, huh? Dominis were often prohibited from working in many occupations. Even rules were made as how to Domini could ride a mule to distinguish him from a Muslim. The non-observance of these rules would entail a severe beating. Often passing a Muslim on the wrong side would begin a beating that could have a Domini mortally wounded. Since Dominis were denied the ability to testify against a Muslim, they were absolutely of no recourse. By the way, Domini is also the name of a book written by Bat Yaor, a pseudonym of a woman who grew up in Egypt as a British citizen and observed firsthand the Islamic treatment of non-Muslims. Based on a serious research, Domini was first published in French in 1971, translated in English in 1985, later into Hebrew and Russian, and we'd say that Domini is probably must-reading for anyone seriously desiring an understanding of Middle Eastern politics and the rationale of the Arab mentality. The first part of the book describes the state of affairs of Domini, the basis and development of Domini in Islam, and the relationship of the jihad, the war to conquer territory for Islam, to the state of Domini. The first part of the book, I went through that. And by the way, do all remember these do all you remember the young schoolgirls that were killed a couple of years ago? And God knows what else happened to them. And of course, Christians' beheadings on a regular basis on the Muslim work schedule, in between drownings, and of course throwing homosexuals off of 4-story buildings. Other than Muslims protected, the host nations are rather treated severely. I brought all that to your attention, not because I just lectured you on getting educated and not doing anything with it and draining the swamp. I gave you that information because we have a group of people that are trying to move to America and change our culture. And when they do that, you will be American, non-Muslim, the new Domini, whether you like it or not. It's fascinating to see how women and homosexuals line up with the Muslim movement and how tolerant they are. Again, we're in a cultural war. We're in a war for the soul of this nation, actually. But to invite the enemy in, who historically we know what their plans are. They're in 2 states. If you're not a Muslim nation, they're at war. And by the way, war is not always with guns. There's a lot of ways to conduct wars. There's a lot of ways to get you to submit other than by the gun, by numbers, by voting. In Michigan, they're probably going to have a Muslim mayor. That's dangerous.
Actually, governor.
Governor, you're right. That's very dangerous.
Extremely dangerous.
And we have representatives now that are Muslim.
The Muslim mayors are bad enough.
They are.
Governor?
And that could be a step to president. Yet please keep in mind that when you talk about Muslims, 2 states that they're in, understand that they are always in those 2 states. They're either in peace, and that's where you're an Islamic nation, or they're at war with you. That's when you're not an Islamic nation, and they're going to make you that. And again, war is not necessarily guns. In America, in a democracy, if you got the right numbers, you can overtake the nation. Look what the liberals have done. Look what the homosexuals have done with even smaller numbers. It's just incredible with public opinion. Out of sight. Out of sight. As a follow-up on last week, When we come back from break, we're going to talk about poverty and crime and the need for the natural family. People can't help that they're poor, right? Or are they poor due to lack of effort? I guess it all depends on who's looking. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVOradio.com.
Don't lose your voice.
Yeah, I hear you.
Faith, discussion, and so much more. Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.
This is Mr. Anderson. I'm sitting here in the studio. I don't know what happened to BJ, but I'm sure he'll be back. And we've been talking about Islam, and now we are moving into some newer topics.
Distractions. Mr. Anderson.
I got to turn you off mute there. So
Yep.
I got a mute button. You got a mute button.
Distractions. Always something, right?
Well, there is.
What do you think? Do you think that when we talked about Domini and we're in a culture war. Muslims intend to move the Middle East to Ohio, to Michigan, to West Virginia.
Well, they're already there in those two states, West Virginia and Michigan.
But they're going to make them Muslim states, and they're going to make this a Muslim nation. Just so you understand that if you're not planning on becoming a Muslim, or you're not having your children planning on becoming a Muslim, you might want to do something about the invasion, about the jihad. And yes, it is a jihad. It could be a population jihad. It could be a public opinion jihad. But their intention is to make the United States a Muslim nation. They've already declared us theirs.
Want to paint the White House black is what they've declared.
Paint it black?
Yeah.
Huh.
You know, the black flag.
Yeah.
That they carry. And you mentioned earlier that, you know, about if a Muslim nation, they're at peace. Got to understand their form of peace is not what our interpretation of peace would be. Because they have Sharia police. It's a police state. And if you're not compliant, even as a Muslim, if you don't follow Sharia, if you make a mistake, they're going to hammer you for it.
Where the Spirit of the Lord is, there you find liberty.
Amen.
The Lord is Jesus Christ. Now, are Muslims coming over here to establish Jesus Christ as the authority? No. They're coming over here to establish themselves the authority over Jesus Christ. And what Mr. Anderson was talking about, and that's very important, is you're going to lose your sovereignty. You're going to lose your liberty. It's going to be by law, not by spirit.
You do what the Caliphate says.
That is huge. That is huge. You know, I kid about, this is BJ and this is my world. Well, you keep setting back. And this is going to be Muhammad, and this is going to be his world, his nation. That's what we're after, folks. Please, don't lose sight of that. Don't lose sight of that.
People say, well, what would Jesus do? Consider what would Muhammad do?
Yeah, true. I do want to get into that poverty and crime, but before I do that, I've got to address the climate change crowd.
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I noticed the weather changed today.
Yes. Yeah. A peer-reviewed study has found that past global temperatures have been routinely adjusted to show warming trends, and is said to account for nearly all of the global warming used to push the climate change. So I guess climate change is caused by man. It's just how man is reporting it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it is a man-made global warming.
Is that called by instrument adjustment?
Yes. Two scientists and a statistician authored the study, and 7 other scientists, meteorologists, and physicists agreed to the study's conclusion. The team researched global average surface temperature, GAST, data sets produced by National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administrations, and the UK's Met Officially Hadley Center for Climate Change to determine if the data was a valid representation of reality. It wasn't. It was found that each new version of GAST, Global Average Surface Temperature, has nearly always exhibited a steeper warming linear trend over its entire history, and it was nearly always accomplished by systematically removing the previously existing cyclical temperature pattern. You understand what's happening here, don't you? You have a template, and certain pieces fit into it, global warming pieces fit into it. If it doesn't fit into it, you just throw them out. Works pretty good, doesn't it? The conclusive finding of the research are that 3 gas data sets are not a valid representation of reality. In fact, the magnitude of their historical data adjustments that remove their cyclical temperature patterns are typically inconsistent with published and credible U.S. and other temperature data. Thus, it is impossible to conclude from the 3 published gas data sets that recent years have been the warmest ever despite current claims of the record-setting warming. So they're comparing today's data to yesterday's data, and then they're throwing out the data that doesn't give them the results that they want. This doesn't fit into the template, I'm not going to use it. Man-made global warming. Study author and meteorologist Dr. Joseph Diallo said that nearly all the warmings that they are showing are in the adjustments. These guys are good. Each data set pushed down the 1940s warming and pushed up the current warming. You'd think that when you make adjustments, you'd sometimes get warming and sometimes get cooling. That almost never happened. The authors, including statistician James Wallace and climate scientologist Craig Eslow of the Cato Institute, says any science put forth by the Environmental Protection Agency to push for regulating greenhouse gases is invalid. They will use their study to petition against the EPA for its 2009 endangerment findings and help the Trump administration scrutinize the agency through reaching for legal authority to impose carbon taxes on citizens. I'm curious, if we actually control the temperature of the world, think about this. Do you think that we, mankind, can control the wind, the seas? I know you're going there, Mr. Anderson. You're thinking of a story, aren't you? Now, I'm thinking of a story where the main character was asked a few critical questions.
Oh, yeah.
He was a man, and maybe, with artificial intelligence notwithstanding, we should ask ourselves some of these same questions that he was asked. For example, he was asked, do you know where is the way that the light is divided? Or the east and wind scattered on the earth? Here's some more questions that God asked Job, chapters 38 through 42. Where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Tell me. If you have understanding, who set the measurements, since you know, or stretched the line on it? And I pray that when you think, as a Christian, if you're a Christian, that when you think about the global warming, that you think about exactly what we're talking about. We're talking about controlling the weather, controlling the heat, controlling the wind. Further asked, or who enclosed the sea with doors? Have you ever in your life commanded the morning and caused the dawn to know its place? Where is the way to the dwelling of the light? And darkness, where is its place? That you may take it to its territory. Have you entered the storehouses of the snow? Or have you seen the storehouses of the hail? Where is the way that the light is divided, or the east wind scattered on the earth? Do you have a way for the thunderbolt to bring rain on land without people? Let's be honest here. We've all watched the evening news or morning news.
Or both.
Mm-hmm. And the weatherman or weather ladies.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do we as humans even do in not controlling, but in predicting the weather, Mr. Anderson?
Not real well.
Mm-hmm.
It's one job that maybe, I don't know if they're even 50% accurate, but
A lot of variables.
yeah, it's interesting. You can have a job where you're 50% wrong.
I'm sorry, folks. Men do not make very good weathermen, nor can they control the winds, the hail, or the heat. Complaining about not forcing others to relinquish their property in order to control the weather is a lot like complaining about Donald Trump colluding with Russia. It really needs to stop. It's divisive. It's expensive. And one heck of a waste of time.
But there's an agenda behind it. I can put on my tinfoil hat made out of aluminum.
Speaking of time, that's yet another thing that man cannot control. And I guess we should be grateful that some Ivy League New World Order twit hasn't come up with a reason to try to control time as well.
Speed it up, slow it down.
Yeah. Think of the taxing possibilities on that.
Oh my goodness.
Mm-hmm. I will ask you, and you instruct me, will you really annul my judgment? Will you condemn me that you may be justified? Or do you have an arm like God? And can you thunder with a voice like his? Folks, we need to check our egos at the door. We cannot control the weather. We cannot control the wind. Well, we can control the reporting of it.
Yeah.
That's kind of like in schools where they revise history.
You can make a wind tunnel and experiment on airplanes and things.
Yeah, yeah. Or land on the moon.
Did that happen?
Rumor has it that it did, but there are some folks out there that's saying that it didn't.
I know.
Man is not perfect. We make a lot of mistakes. And I don't question the intentions of the global warming folks. I don't question that at all. I think they believe they're trying to do the right thing.
Even Al Gore?
There's levels of insanity, and I think he might be in the book. He might be in the book.
Just asking.
Yeah. I hear you. You're ornery. Poverty and crime. I don't know, we have enough time to get into this. We have to wait till the next segment because I think this is a little long for that. By the way, if you want to call in, 614-423-4220. We hope you're getting this live stream. Do we have access to the internet where we can answer response to?
We
folks?
do and we don't, and not today. But we will be able to look at the chat on YouTube when we get our equipment squared away.
Yep.
We got to get another techie in here to fix that for us.
Yep. There. Put that on your prayer list. We get. Oh my goodness. We had quite a time last week. We were putting rubber bands and duct tape and everything on the program to get done with it. We did get through it. We did get through it. And with a few hiccups.
It was like an overnight setup for a big concert last night. I'll tell you. I didn't know if I'd have this board up and running in time.
Yeah, Mr. Anderson was in the studio late last night and long.
I want double overtime on this.
Yeah, okay. talk to management about that, Mr.
Oh,
Anderson.
my friends ask me. I tell them what I do sometimes. They say, "You get paid for that?" I go, No, it costs me money. I'm paying to have this fun.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm grateful. I count this a blessing. I was thinking about blessings this morning.
Hey,
and,
go ahead.
And you know what? A new car is not a blessing. A blessing is having the wisdom of the Lord.
It really is to be able to filter and find the truth. And you're not going to do that through secular humanism.
You know, it seems like a burden sometimes, but my goodness.
Or you can't do that through secular humanism, but you have to adjust the results. 2 and 5 make 4. Yes, it does. Just look at the end result. 2 and 5 make 4. And I'm going to give you an example of the human reasoning when we come back from break. And that's poverty and crime and a need for the natural family. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVOradio.com.
Last call with B.J. Edwards. Real talk about real life on WTVOradio.com.
This will be a good article lead-in, by the way, for our second hour. We have a great expose from Coach Dave Dobermeyer on the family and the importance of the family. It's just such a key factor. It's such a key factor. This
Huge.
It's going to help us understand this a little bit. Poverty and crime. People can't help that they're poor, right? Or are they poor due to lack of effort? I guess it all depends on who's looking. A study by the Washington Post and the Kaiser Foundation. I wonder what that study is trying to accomplish here, Mr. Anderson. Washington Post?
Oh, well, an agenda.
Claims that Christians in general and, drum roll please, white evangelical Christians in particular are much more likely than non-Christians to attribute poverty to individual failings. Personal responsibility, right? And yep, there's a lot to be said about personal responsibility, amen?
Amen.
46% of all Christians said that lack of effort is generally to blame for a person's poverty, compared to 29% of non-Christians. Cradle to grave. Judgmental Christians again, right? Yeah. Among white evangelical Protestants, I didn't think we're supposed to look at things in terms of black and white. Are we, Mr. Anderson? Are we allowed to do that?
Well, depends on what you're looking at. Yeah, I mean, it does depend. If you're looking at the heart and soul, that's one thing. If you're looking at the culture, that might be a different story.
Among white evangelical Protestants, 53% blamed lack of effort, while 41% blamed circumstances. However, 65% of Americans who are atheist, agnostic, or have no particular affiliation attributed poverty to difficult circumstances. Victims. Remember our show on victims?
I do.
31% due to lack of effort, the study says. Okay. So now we're getting into the good guy territory, right? Atheist, liberals. They're victims. It's not their fault. They couldn't help themselves. There are exceptions. But again, I'm a white Christian, so you know what I'm going to think, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Among black Christians, 32% blamed lack of effort compared to 64% who blamed circumstances.
So it's your fault.
Yeah. Among Democrats, 26% blamed the lack of effort, while 72% blamed circumstances.
That was Democrats?
Mm-hmm. Among Republicans, 63% blamed lack of effort and 32% blamed circumstances. Well, there you have it. White Republican Christians. There's the problem, right? There's the problem.
We're the problem.
We're confirming this. Thank you, Washington Post. Thank you, Kaiser Foundation. This is a need to know. This is a need to know. Who come up with these questions? Dr. Richard Land, president of the Southern Evangelical Seminary in Matthews, North Carolina, responded to the claims of the study, adding that one has to be extremely naive to believe that poverty is mostly caused either by circumstances such as institutional, racial, ethnic, and class prejudice, or lack of personal effort and responsibility, often aided and abetted by addictions to self-destructive substances. He said individual poverty is due to some complex combination of factors and varies with each. We all know people born into privilege who end up as derelicts or worse, right? And sadly, we all know of people with enormous talent and drive who, deprived of decent educational opportunities from the earliest onset, with no possible role models or mentors, have been deeply hindered in breaking multi-generational cycles of systematic poverty into which they were born. Mr. Moore, you're getting closer, but you're not there yet. You're not there yet. You all are just, it's all around you. Occam's razor, but you can't see it. I interviewed a social worker the other day and went over this study with them. And they said that everyone was missing the real problems. I said, and the problem is? In their experience, the social worker, what they saw with most of the losers in life had one thing in common. Mr. Anderson, you might be able to guess it. I'm not going to ask you because you probably will guess it.
You don't want me to give it away again?
No, nope. These losers had one thing in common. Poor parental examples. Poor parental follow-through, or no parents at all. And by the way, this social worker has worked in a homeless shelters, and dealt with poverty on a daily basis for years. Later on in the study, I did find that the Washington Post quoted Albert Mohler as saying that there's a strong Christian impulse to understand poverty is deeply rooted in morality. He said individual poverty is due to some complex combination factors and varies with each individual. Unwillingness to work in bad financial situations or broken family structures lead to poverty, he said. Finally, he got to the truth. I watched Tucker Carlson the other night, and he had a self-described black activist on the show. And that black activist was making the point that lack of education is causing poverty.
Lack of education?
Lack of education. And it's kind of like saying that somebody that has their doctorate is going to be automatically morally better than the rest of us. Or when it comes to money, if you're poor, you're going to do bad things. So if you're rich, you're automatically going to do what? Good things, right?
Automatically.
Isn't that how it works? But that really isn't how it works, is it?
Not if you're in Washington.
I don't know why it is, Mr. Anderson, that we just seemingly insist on overlooking the natural family and the importance of the family.
Political correctness is part of it.
But
talk about lack of education. That bothers me because how is it we're lacking in education if everybody is required to go to school? Right. And education is handed to the population of this country, even forced. And they say lack of education.
It's the implied, and again, it's a social segment that they want to apply that is at a disadvantage. And they probably are at a disadvantage in that there's so many government programs that are meant to keep them in slavery.
Absolutely.
Really?
We know that.
You want housing? Don't have to work for it. Don't have to have education. You just have to be the right level, and we'll put you in there.
You know, I was a teacher for 30 years. You can blame me or not blame me, but, you know, 1 in 5 students paid attention. If that, you know, and I had small classes, but, you know, when you tried to implore your students to listen to get some certain information, you know, that was half the task for most of the day was just getting. I mean, it's hard to get a group of people on the same page at the same time.
Various cultures, various backgrounds, various parents types.
You know, and then when
I'm not letting you off the hook, but I'm just noting things.
Well, yeah, and there's students that, you know, when they complain because you called their name out in class to say, "Hey, what are you doing?" I'm up here. I'm explaining how to do a math problem. And they go home and complain that I yelled at them.
Like the coach?
Yeah,
the coach yelled at me today and he hit me on the back. Oh no!
I didn't yell. You know, that was the common complaint though. If you called their name or tried to correct them in some manner, no matter what manner you used, it was always, "He yelled at me."
Yeah, I hinted about self-reliance early on in the program, and that really is very important. If you teach, well, first of all, you want to teach your children respect, and it starts with mother and father. It doesn't start with the government-run schools. It doesn't start with those indoctrination centers. It starts with the mother and the father.
It does.
And you need to be surrounded by people that feel the same way. Because if you're a child and they're going to have friends and they're going to go to other parents' house and you find out that your children never come to your house, then you better start worrying. Because that means they're going to go to where they can get away with as much as they possibly can and are getting away with as much as they possibly can. I don't really know the answer to the drug problems we have in America today, but I would start at the family core. And I would say let's start focusing on the natural family. Let's start playing around with this modern family and experimenting with different ways, 2 fathers, 2 mothers, or 3 sets of parents or 5 sets of parents. This insanity, that has to stop. Children need a mother and a father. Anything outside of that is confusing.
Confusing, yeah.
So again, we're going to focus on the natural family, and coming up in the next hour, and please stay tuned, we're going to have an incredible expository by one Coach Dave Daubenmire, who talks about the family. And
he has a good understanding.
Yep, he does, and he is kind of like the paternal leader of his clan, and that's meant to be.
I'm trying to facilitate that. I'm recognizing that more and more as a grandpa, and you know how important my influence is at this stage of life. I'm an old guy at 66, but my goodness, I know a lot more than these 30-somethings.
Yeah, and they've had the truth kind of deprogrammed at them, and they don't know. They don't know half of what the generation before them and half of what the generation before them, so half and half is 50-50, which is 100%. So we're really handicapping children. We really are.
The generations have, you know, gone farther and farther away from the Lord, if you think about it, on the timeline.
Well, farther and farther away from the truth.
Well, yeah.
Alone.
I mean, look how far away we are from men who actually talk to God.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, Adam walked with him in the garden.
Yep.
And then his children knew him,
yeah.
who knew God.
Yep.
And now, then Noah, he came along, and we're coming up on break here,
Yep.
but it's amazing to me when you think about it.
So what's your opinion? 614-423-4220. What is your opinion? What is your answer to what's happening in America today? Is it to elect the right person in office?
Boy, we need some answers. Well, there is an answer,
Yeah.
but it's too generic sometimes.
Getting there is a problem.
Jesus is the answer. But, yeah, application is another piece of the...
He gave us the truth.
He did.
And the truth shall set you free, and we are definitely not free.
Knowledge of the truth.
Oh, man. Culture war. Welcome to America. What a plum. What a plum to acquire. Shoo, boy. Stay tuned. We're going to give you some solutions.
Keeping you informed. This is Last Call with BJ Edwards.
Sorry, I'm a little distracted on my coordinating my left and right hand here.
I got a camera.
A camera staring at us. We added an extra activity here in the studio today.
Yep. Hope you're enjoying it. I hope you're enjoying it. Again, 614-423-4220. Our website is Natural Family Foundation, 3 words, naturalfamilyfoundation.org. We really hope you will go to the website and educate yourself. And one of the places we have there is in resources, we have a place where you can locate your congressman, locate the president, locate your senator. Well, wait a minute, BJ. You already told me that's not going to do any good. It's not, but it's still going to do you good to talk to them. Because if you're going to defeat them, for example, I called my congressman and I said, hey, would you step up and be a statesman? And would you talk about the issues of the day? Would you talk about this insanity about Russia? Key that up to about 11:37. Would you talk about Russia? Would you talk about the division that's happening in America? Nothing. As a matter of fact, 2 weeks after I had that conversation with the office, my congressman and my senators signed an affidavit, if you will, they call it a law, that admits that Russia did interfere with the election. So, well, BJ, I just took my tail between my legs and go home. No, I'm going to use that. In the future, I could write a letter to the editor and I could say, hey, this is a guy that's running for office with no proof at all. He believes that the Russians interfered with the election. Do you want that kind of a person in office? Or call your congressman and say, where is the investigation on Hillary Clinton? If we're doing an investigation on something of a Russian invasion, which we could never improve, why don't you investigate Hillary and Barack Obama, for that matter? And let's talk about some of the things that did happen, like the destruction of evidence. Admittedly, the evidence was destroyed, cleansed, as she so gleefully said. That's good right there. Again, learn, take notes. On such and such date, I called the office. And such date, by the way, I never got a call back from my congressman. Huh? Not only did his office fight me on the issue, he didn't even bother to call me back.
Well,
just some things to think about.
See if he gets a Christmas card from us.
Yeah. Or our vote. Already not getting my vote, but my vote doesn't make any difference unless I can wake up other people. Well, first of all, we need to get somebody that will run for office and has the kahunas to do the right thing. And that's tough to do. I helped get my representative elected. I walked the streets with him. I had the phone conversations at night with him. I worried with him. I helped him. And he got into office. And 2 years later, Jekyll and Hyde. I don't know what happened. It takes a lot of strength. I'm sure there's a lot of things that happen out there, that promises, power. So you got to get the right person in office. And that's probably going to be that oddball, that Coach Dave Doblemar type. Well,
Trump type,
or even the B.J. Edwards type. Or yeah, we're talking about Trump type, the oddballs.
Yeah.
That you'd never think. I mean, what do you have to lose by throwing somebody like that in office? What do you have? Seriously, what do you have to lose? You're already losing your nation. You're losing your sovereignty. What else is it that you have to lose? Is this person going to embarrass you? Really? Any more than what I just described?
Call us. Tell us what you think.
Yep. Again, 614-423-4220. We talk about the family a lot, and Coach is a great expositor, Coach Dave Doblemar. And he has a morning radio program from 7 to 8 o'clock in the morning, which I recommend. It's a great Bible study. He talks about a lot of subjects. And the other day, I caught him talking about my favorite subject. And that would be what, Mr. Anderson?
Families.
Oh, my. I'm just going to wear that out.
Oh, yeah. That cozy, warm family around the fireplace. Checking each other for fleas.
So anyway, Coach was talking about the family, and my ears started to perk it up. And he came from his own personal experience, and there's some people that he interviewed that are on. By the way, if you get on that morning show, if you do it for the internet, you can actually talk to the expositor, unlike your church where you can't talk to your expositor. You can't get. I don't know how many of you have stood up, put your hand up in the air, and say, "Pastor, I've got a question."
Yeah, try that.
Yeah. And when you hear the pastor continue to talk and look the other way, you go, hey, Pastor, I've got a question. Now, if you say it loud enough and long enough, you lose your seat. You'll be asked to leave.
There's 2 or 3 guys that come up to your pew aisle and
ushers with the SS on their sleeve. No, it's not that bad, but
although in my church, I speak out all the time.
You'd be ostracized. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, it is unique at our church, and our pastor invites conversation and ideas, but we're a small group, and it's hard to do in a large group. I understand that.
There is something about order, but there's also something about participation. Again, if you're in a classroom, you put your hand up and you ask the teacher a question, don't you?
I hope they do.
Yeah. You being a teacher, I'm sure you do.
I mean, I invited that. Showed me, 1, they were listening, and 2, I didn't want to leave them in the dark if they were getting confused about an issue.
I remember
I even used to give them extra credit for finding my mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, nobody ever got extra credit, right?
I would make some on purpose just to see.
Were you practicing for global warming? Were you changing the test results? Well, it really should be this, but it should. That's probably why we got in so much trouble in teaching and all these new teaching methods, is because teachers like you said, "Okay, find me wrong, and I'll give you extra credit." Yeah, that ain't happening. That ain't happening. So anyway, I started to say that I was in a church one time, and I've been going steady too, and one of the parishioners that I knew had an issue that he wanted to talk about. It involved me, by the way. So after the sermon was over with, after the plate was passed, after everybody stood up and was ready to stand out, this guy ran up to the microphone and started making announcements. And I'm going, oh my God, what's going to happen here? He got himself a lecture, brother. I mean, he got himself a lecture. Oh, he and I soon left the church after that, but that's another story. We could talk about churches. Coach could talk about churches.
Well, we need to. That's what our Minuteman site's about.
Yeah. Yep.
mmunited.org.
MaryMaryUnited.org. Again, call the number 614-423-4220.
We're interested in churches.
Yep.
And seeing them. They're an important role in our society, our culture. I mean, it was the churches that started the revolution, or at least carried it.
Yep. And commanded it.
Jonas Clark comes to mind. We could go through that history lesson too sometime.
Yeah. Okay. This is a rather long. I don't think it's an hour long, and maybe 42 minutes or something like that long from the coach. But it's about the family, and it's a must listen. So there'll be some interruptions, but please pay attention. This is Coach Dave Daubenmire.
Oh, we're going to run this straight through? Skip the break?
No, I'll let you know about the breaks. We'll probably maybe skip through the first break.
Okay, because we're coming up. Okay.
5 minutes. Unless you got something on your mind that you want to talk about, Mr. Anderson.
Well, not at the moment.
Okay.
I'm excited about this piece. This is top-notch stuff.
Well,
here.
then let's go with it.
Let's talk about dads, right?
Yeah, let's talk about dads. Coach Dave Daubenmire.
Too bad it's not Father's Day. We could bring.
Save it.
Well,
Save it for Father's Day.
It should be Father's Day every day.
B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, your last call, WTVOradio.com. And we're also live on the internet today.
And if you got a comment while you're listening, go ahead, call in. We'll bring you in.
Got it. Coach Dave Daubenmire, go ahead.
I scared him off. Still only have 19 people in there. I'd love to see 30
Talk about the number of people that are in the
queue.
queue.
Woke up this morning and I was just sitting in our new digs here. I think I told you this. We built, my wife and I have we have a new home. Smaller, we've downsized. We built a smaller home. And it's right at the base of the hill. My grandchildren, one half of my grandchildren live at the top of the hill. And they can get up in the morning. In fact, it happened the other day. You saw it here on the show. They can get up in the morning and they run down the hill. They could have breakfast with Grampy every day. And it's really one of the real joys in my life to see that happen. And as a guy who's 64 years old, heading into the final quarter of my life, whatever it would be, I understand more and more the importance of us handing our values off to our children, more and more. And I was pondering and thinking about how many of my friends who have children similar age to my children aren't grandparents. I thought, man, that is so sad. The joy of being a grandparent. If those of you haven't done it yet, you'll find out. It's like unbelievable. Scripture tells us that that's our glory. Our grandkids is our glory. And then that whole thought then sent me into a different direction. And I want to share all that with you today, guys, because I think it's critical. The fifth commandment. Does anybody know what the fifth commandment is? Let's go to Exodus 20 real quick, Jared. And I thought, verse 12, I think it is. I think it starts at verse 12. I'm sorry. Exodus 20, verse 12. We all know the 10 Commandments. And I don't know if Larry's with us today or not, but Larry showed us that there's more than just the 10 Commandments. There's a lot of them. These just happen to be the ones that Moses wrote down, or the Lord wrote down on the tablet of Moses. Are you there, Jared? There you are, buddy. Good man, Jared. And I found it really, really kind of strange as I was thinking today. Wow. Verse 12. Honor thy father and thy mother. Man, oh man, I got thinking about that. Thinking about honoring my own parents, my dad being gone, my mom being gone, Michelle's mom and dad being gone, and how much I watched my wife, Michelle, God bless wife, honor her mother in particular, as she struggled with Alzheimer's it seemed like forever. I watched Michelle honor her mother and father. And you know something you can do, something I realized? To honor your father and mother is not the same as to love your father and mother. It's not the same. You can honor your father and mother without loving. Or some people try to love their father and mother without honoring. And those two are not the same. And I also noticed that this 12th commandment says, honor thy father and mother. There's a reason. There's a promise here. There's a connection. Honor your father and your mother. Why? That your days may be long upon the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee. I begin to ask myself this. I'm going to ask you today. What would that look like? Honoring your father and mother. What would it look like? And then I began to think about just even fathers. Being a father, thinking about my own dad. And the older I get, the more I seem to be like my dad. I've now picked up my dad's habit of getting up early in the morning, getting up for chickens. Dad was always in bed. The latter years that I remember, he was always in bed about dark and up before dawn. You go over to my house, he'd be cooking bacon and eggs every morning about 4 o'clock. He'd be up. And now I find myself, I'm developing that habit. A lot of different things about it. I begin to see more and more of my dad in me. But what does it mean to honor thy father and thy mother? What's that like? And what does it mean to be a father? And what does it mean? Bobby Lee, I know you're listening right now. JR, I don't know if I think you're out there, JR. The scourge of fatherlessness in America. And I began to think about my own children, my daughter Abby, who lives up the hill, my daughter Maggie, who lives about 4 miles away. And the greatest honor they have given me is to be a grandfather. What an honor that is. And I circle back around to think about the friends, the current friends that I have right now who are parents, who have children the same age as my children, 35 and below, who have no grandchildren. Why? Because we have not taught our children the value of being a father and honoring fatherhood. You stay with me today because I'm going to go somewhere. This is deeper and far more injurious, far more harmful to our American society than we even understand. And I'm going to tell you something. Here's what I did this morning. You listening out there? You listening out there? I did a Google search. And here's what I Google searched. How many times does the Bible mention fatherlessness? I got them for you. And then I did another Google search. You know what the other Google search was? How many times does the Bible mention motherlessness? You know the answer? None. The Bible never mentions motherlessness. Never. Isn't that something? Isn't that something? And I'm not trying to step on anybody's toes, and I'm not trying to make anybody upset, but I'm going to tell you something. Your children haven't given you grandchildren yet because they don't understand what it means to honor you. And the reason they don't know what it means to honor you is we didn't teach them. We didn't teach them. And one of the worst things that we've done is we try to teach our children to love us but not honor us. We have it totally and completely backwards. So we are in a fatherless generation. Jared's pulled up those verses, open Bible verses. James 20. I'm not going to read all these to you. I'll send them to you if you want to. Religion that God and others accept as pure and faultless as this, to look after orphans and widows in their time of distress. This isn't King James, by the way. That's fatherlessness. John 14:28. You heard me say, I'm going away and I'm coming back to you. If you love me, you would be glad that I'm going to the Father, for the Father is greater than I. Psalm 68:5. God is a father to the fatherless, a defender of widows. Psalm 146. The Lord watches over the foreigner and sustains the fatherless and the widow. Job 29:12, because I rescued the poor who cried for help, and the fatherless, who had no one to help them. Matthew 6:1, be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others. If you do, you will be rewarded trying to find fatherlessness, so that you give them then your and next one. 22, do not take advantage of widows or the fatherless. Exodus 22:22. John 14, if you love me, keep my commandments. Verse down at the bottom. Whoever has my commands and keeps them is the one who loves me. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I'll love him. Psalm 10:14. But you, God, see the trouble of the afflicted. You consider their grief. You take in their hand. The victims commit themselves to you. You are the helper of the fatherless. Psalm 8:20, 82:3. Defend the weak and the fatherless. Lamentations. We have become fatherless. Our mothers are widows. Proverbs 23:10. Do not move an ancient boundary stone or encroach on the fields of the fatherless. Psalm 94:6. They slay the widow and the foreigner. They murder the fatherlessness. Isaiah 58:7. If it is not to share your food, is it not to share your food with the hungry and provide the poor wanderer with shelter? When you see the naked, to clothe them, and to turn not away from your own flesh and blood. Job 6, you would have even cast lots for the fatherless. Deuteronomy 14, at the end of 3 years, bring all the tithes of the year's produce in the storehouse, so that the Levites who have no allotment, and for the foreigners, and the fatherless, and the widows. Psalm 10:8, defending the fatherless and the oppressed. Acts 20, verse 5. In everything I did, I showed this by the kind of hard work we must help the weak, remembering the Lord's and himself. It's more blessed to give than receive. For Jeremiah 7, if you do not oppress the foreigner, the fatherless, or the widow, and do not shed innocent blood in his place, and if you do not follow other gods to your own harm. Not the motherless, the fatherless. The fatherless. Jump in here, Bobby. I saw that you tried to get in earlier.
Yeah,
you see it, don't you, Bobby?
Yeah, I see it every day. I live it every day. Yesterday, I live it 6 hours. Anyway,
this is one of the regular listeners on the program.
12 hours, actually. Listen, I was at a training one time a few years ago, and the guy that created this whole approach here in Northeast PA and other areas to reestablish the parents working together, reestablish dominance in the home. There's only X amount of people trained to do this, and it's a year-long training. And most of the time, I'm in these trainings, and it's mostly women. It's a human service industry. It's mostly women. And
yep. Schools are run by women. Schools are run by women. Yep. Human resources are run by women. It's all run by women. Go, Bobby.
And he's a masculine guy. He's a little bit older, but he has to soften his approach to his audience. And where him and I differ, as much as him and I are one-minded, he's still using these terms such as, anyway, it doesn't matter. He reaches out to me from a masculine perspective at times, and he says, I'll tell you what the boys need. They need to go on a week-long camping trip in the Adirondacks. The boy needs to be among men. Right, Bobby? Mm-hmm. And I said, absolutely, Dr. So-and-so. That said, from my perspective, and there's an energy transfer that takes place among men. When you're out there doing your thing among men, you are forced to perform. You get information, you get approval, you get redirection. That energy transfer and that development of manhood and masculinity can only take place among men out there doing that thing. Now, as phenomenal and as great and as mothers and grandmothers are at trying to raise the kids that the men abandoned, they can't do it. That's why I'm a fake daddy in 4 counties.
Mm. Grandpa, rise up and be a daddy to your grandchild. Now, folks, listen, understand this. This is being done on purpose, right? You understand this? This is being done on purpose. That in our culture and our society, we as dads have not passed the torch to our own children, And as a result, we see a nation filled with fatherless boys raised by women. Now look, let me use this show as an example. You either love it or you hate it. And I know this. You know who loves it? Real men love it. And women who love real men love this show. You know who doesn't love it? People don't love men. Somebody say amen, because that's a good place to say amen. That's it. And there's the wheat and the chaff is being separated even in this show.
That's the
Women
truth.
say, oh, he's too man, he's too loud, he's too aggressive, he's too man. See, they want to be in charge. See, they don't like it. They don't like it. They want that sissy guy they know standing in the pulpit. Guys, I got a lot of stuff I got to get to here, okay? Bear with me.
Amen.
This is so much deeper than we understand, okay? Jared, please, I covered you up here. Does somebody want to jump in? I hear a little feedback. Sometimes that means to me somebody wants in here. Jared, this is profound. Guys, are you ready? Pull up, Jared, Dennis Prager. It's down near the bottom. Dennis Prager on what the fifth commandment really means. Now, guys, of all the things the Lord could have commanded, he commanded, honor thy father and mother. Why? 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 You know, I heard a guy say this, that he worked in the prison system, and he was a chaplain in the prison system, and always around Mother's Day, he'd have inmates come up to him and say, hey, can you, Pastor, could you get me a Mother's Day card that I can send to my mother? He said he'd just get swamped, hundreds of them. He'd have to get hundreds of Mother's Day cards. And Father's Day would roll around, and not a one of them would ask for Father's Day. Not a one. Discouraged. But see, there's a spiritual connection and a spiritual component. Remember this. God, the Bible always speaks of fatherlessness, never motherlessness. Never, ever, ever. And there's a reason why. Watch this 5-minute video from Dennis Prager, and it will blow your socks off. Prager University on the fifth commandment. Play it, Jared.
Hey, we're gonna take a quick break. This is BJ along with Mr. Anderson, WTVOradio.com. We're listening to Coach Dave. This is good stuff. This is great stuff. He is a great expository preacher, among other things. But he's talking about the importance of the father in the families. And the social worker that he talked with, Bobby Lee, said something that just, I'd heard it several times but didn't pay attention to it. He said that there's an energy transfer that takes place among men. Can you imagine a child that's being brought up with two men or two mommies? Where's that energy transfer going to take place? It's not going to take place, folks.
2 men, it's overload. Two mommies, it's none at all.
And what's coming up from Dennis Prager is incredible, because it goes back into the fifth commandment and breaks it down as well. This is critical for our nation. It's critical for you. If you have a child that is abusing drugs, is it because you haven't been the father that you need to be? That you aren't the authority? Do your children love you but don't respect you? You find out at Thanksgiving dinners where that is. We're going to get to Dennis Prager. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Your last call, WTVOradio.com. Keeping you informed. And if you would, Mr. Anderson, go ahead and listen to Dennis Prager.
Okay.
You got it on pause. Nope.
The fifth of the 10 commandments reads, honor your father and your mother. This commandment is so important that it is one of the only commandments in the entire Bible that gives a reason for observing it, that your days may be long in the land that the Lord your God is giving you. Many people read that part of the fifth commandment as a reward. But while it may be regarded as a reward, the fact remains that it is a reason. If you build a society in which children honor their parents, your society will long survive. And the corollary is, a society in which children do not honor their parents is doomed to self-destruction. In our time, this connection between honoring parents and maintaining civilization is not widely recognized. On the contrary, Many of the best educated parents do not believe that their children need to show them honor, since honoring implies an authority figure, and that is a status many modern parents reject. In addition, many parents seek to be loved, not honored, by their children. Yet neither the Ten Commandments nor the Bible elsewhere commands us to love our parents. This is particularly striking, given that the Bible commands us to love our neighbor, to love God, and to love the stranger. The Bible understands that there will always be individuals who, for whatever reason, do not love a parent. Therefore, it does not demand what may be psychologically or emotionally impossible, but it does demand that we show honor to our parents. And it makes this demand only with regard to parents. There is no one else who the Bible commands us to honor. So then, why is honoring parents so important? Why does the Ten Commandments believe that society could not survive if this commandment were widely violated? One reason is that we as children need it. Parents may want to be honored, and they should want to be, but children need to honor parents. A father and a mother who are not honored are essentially adult peers of their children. They are not parents. No generation knows better than ours the terrible consequences of growing up without a father. Fatherless boys are far more likely to grow up and commit violent crime, mistreat women, and act out against society in every other way. Girls who do not have a father to honor, and hopefully to love as well, are more likely to seek the wrong men and to be promiscuous at an early age. Second, honoring parents is how nearly all of us come to recognize that there is a moral authority above us to whom we are morally accountable. And without this, we cannot create or maintain a moral society. Of course, for the Ten Commandments, the ultimate moral authority is God, who is therefore higher than even our parents. But it is very difficult to come to honor God without having had a parent, especially a father, to honor. Sigmund Freud, the father of psychiatry and an atheist, theorized that one's attitude towards one's father largely shaped one's attitude toward God. There's one more reason why honoring parents is fundamental to a good society. Honoring parents is the best antidote to totalitarianism. One of the first things totalitarian movements seek to do is to break the child-parent bond. Wow. The child's allegiance is shifted from parents to the state. Even in democratic societies, the larger the state becomes, the more it usurps the parental role. Finally, there are many ways to honor parents. The general rule is this: they get special treatment. Parents are unique, so they must be treated in a unique way. You don't talk to them in quite the same way you do anyone else. For example, you might use expletives when speaking to a friend, but you don't with a parent. You don't call them by their first name. And when you leave their home and make your own, you maintain contact with them. Having no contact with parents is the opposite of honoring them. Wow. And yes, we all recognize that some parents have behaved so cruelly, and I mean cruelly, not annoyingly, that one finds it morally impossible to honor them. There are such cases, but they are rare. And remember this: if your children see you honor your parents, no matter how difficult it may sometimes be, the chances are far greater that they will honor you.
The best healthcare around.
I'm Dennis Prager.
Wow.
Join Prager University.
Wow, 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 wow.
I have to jump in there.
Go ahead, Bobby.
Listen, I disagree with those last few statements there. It's not rare. Generational behavior. Parents are. I think that, I mean, it was a phenomenal thing that he said there through that whole presentation. But I think those last few statements kind of showed his lack of understanding of the reality of what's taking place anywhere in America. Listen, generational behavior is something absolutely incredible. Our grandparents weren't as great as we think they are. So Granddaddy, what was Granddaddy doing? It was Granddaddy that was perpetrating on Mommy and Daddy. And this is so huge, bringing us to the point. Almost everybody that I deal with, and I've dealt with a lot of people over the last 16, 17, a lot of families, and almost everybody I deal with has some sort of sexual abuse perpetration, either on a low scale or on a scale that it's hard for normal people to wrap their heads around. All right, so it's generational behavior that's what brought us here, and it's something bigger than the man no longer being in the home. It's the man and the work that go together. Two times this week, I have attempted to explain to this generation, whether it's an 18-year-old girl or a 10-year-old boy that can be somewhat intelligent when he wants, and family. Generation X was the last generation to where we could walk out in the backer fields of Kentucky, and I could make $5 an hour working all day in the 90-degree heat. And I said, that's what you need, 18-year-old, because if you had an inkling of understanding what that's like, we wouldn't be sitting here, you still thinking that you can spend your entire day on Netflix waiting for somebody to feed you when you got high school graduation 6 months around and you're entitled and you don't have to make a decision. And we wouldn't be here 10 or 15-year-old when you're punching Mommy in the face and you think I'm strange for telling you can't do that.
Mm. There's no daddies in the home, Bob.
Nobody's in the home.
There's no daddies in the school. It's all mommies.
Right.
It's all women in the schools. Folks, listen. This was done on purpose. Do you understand that? This was done on purpose. Now, Dennis Prager pointed out something, Jared. I don't know if you can pull that back up there, the Exodus, Jared. Chad Estes says that's why he calls them the AC generation. Air conditioning, that's truth, isn't it? But here, listen, this is the most profound thing I think Dennis Prager said. It says here, you got it up there, Jared? I'm sorry. Hold a fast one on you there. Doesn't matter. I got it here. So it says, honor, there it is, honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the land which the Lord God giveth thee. That doesn't mean your life. It doesn't mean that you live a long life. It means that your heritage will stand forever. If you honor your father and your mother, if we go back to that biblical standard, marriage, no divorce, honor your parents, the stuff Bobby's dealing with, we wouldn't be dealing with. Again, who's at fault? Go to Psalm 78, Jared. The church. The church not holding people accountable. I'm not pausing. I got 1,000 things I want to show you here. This is important. Psalm 78. Go down. We've done this before, guys, but I want you to see this. Verse 5, Psalm 78. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law unto Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make it known to their children. Honor thy father and thy mother. But what has happened here in America is we've turned parents and fathers into friends. They're just our friends. And as I started out, one of the things I want you to understand is your children are not having children because they don't understand that having children honors the father and the mother. It's one of the greatest examples of dishonor that you won't give your father grandchildren.
614.
Anybody disagree with that? Am I missing something here?
Coach, you know what? This is so hot. I got to tell you one thing.
If you'd like
being raised in a fatherless household, after I got saved and I read that scripture that God would be our father, when I discovered that, I started thinking, you know what? 50% of the guys out there are raised in divorce homes.
Yep.
So I did what I call an Amway church. I started to set up everybody to not only disciple everybody, but I figured if I could get the fatherless guys saved, they'd be dedicated for life. And I realized that if you got the fatherless guy saved, they would hold their machine gun and follow you anywhere.
Amen.
You are set up. You are set up, Coach, that if we started getting these fatherless men here into this room, they would follow you anywhere. They would take you.
Tim, what do you think? What do you think football coaching was? As the football coach, let's be honest here. I was more of a father to those kids than their own dads were.
Exactly.
Because I set rules and standards and mostly built into their lives. And their dad was just sitting around drinking beer and watching football games and talking about fishing and not passing on a standard, morals and values. And that's our name, Daubenmeier. That's our name. Not passing that on to our kids. Most of the stuff that stuff I learned right and wrong, I learned from another man. I can promise you that. Didn't learn it from my dad. Loved my dad. But he hadn't learned it from his dad. He didn't know what it was all about. I know it's hot, Tim. I know it's hot. And you know what? There are guys watching right now who are still mad at your dad. Still haven't forgiven him. Still hold a grudge. I understand. I always told our coaches, told our players, you don't have to love me. You don't have to love me. I mean, you want to play, you're going to honor me. You're going to do what I ask you to do, or your butt's on the bench. Now, why? Hey, Rich, I see you're in there this morning, man. Rich, why aren't we doing this in our home? You've done that. You've drawn that line. You said what you're doing doesn't honor me, and it won't be in my house. Can you jump in here, Rich? He could be good.
Yeah, that's a long, hard battle, but that's what a dad does. You know, a father does. Real quick, it honored me yesterday when my son called me and said that they were doing unsafe things at work. My son told his supervisor, he said, "This is dangerous and this can't go on." They continued to do it. My son put in his resignation, walked away from a $100,000 plus a year job. And he says, somebody's got to do the right thing here.
Wow. Huh?
Proud of you. Anything, let me know.
Huh? That's what it's about, isn't it?
You've got to do the right thing, whatever the cost is.
So whatever it was you built into your son, it is bearing fruit.
Amen.
And it wasn't easy work.
It was still difficult.
It's hard.
But that's our responsibility, you know.
And it will show up in your grandbabies. It's going to show up in your grandbabies too, Rich. That's the thing. That type of parenting shows up in your grandbaby. Okay, listen. I got time. Hey, Jared, let's go down to where it says statistics. Statistics. Are you ready, guys? You ready? The fatherless generation. There's just some statistics.
I wanted to pause this, and there's an awful lot of information being thrown at you. Can you do anything now is the question. Most of us have already lost the children. They don't honor us. What can we do? Coach doesn't address this, but this is something that really does need to be addressed. You love your children. You want what's best for them. But if they don't honor you, how can they possibly have what's best for them?
Well, it's a difficult time, and they talked about generations, and that's a good point. You know, family history goes back, and you know they used to talk about the black sheep of the family, the horse thief, and you know the aunt or uncle or whoever comes up in the generations later, just like the horse thief of the family. It goes back, but there is something we can do, even in the midst of pieces.
With God, all things are possible. Go ahead, please.
Well, yes, with that, but you know, restoring your family. First of all, restore yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't do anything if you're lost and confused. And if you understand who you are in the Lord, where you get your strength, you begin to be able to be an example. And maybe you can't get the words across, but you can show by how you live your life and how you change. And admit where you were wrong. Your children will respect you when you look back and say, oh, well, you know, I was not very smart then, and I made mistakes, and I'm sorry. And I hope that I can help you overcome my mistakes so you don't repeat them with your children and grandchildren. We have to take steps forward. We can't sit in the past and sulk.
Or give up, have no hope, don't have a prayer. I think that's great advice, Mr. Anderson. That's incredible advice. It really is. So we're going to get back to details. This is B.J. Edwards along with Mr. Anderson. Should I say Dr. Anderson this morning? Mr. Anderson, WTVOradio.com, last call. We're listening to Coach Dave Daubenmire, 7 to 8 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time every morning. And you can pick him up on CoachDaveLive.com. This was in August, I believe, in August 3rd. It's called Having Thy Father and Thy Mother, Honoring the Mother, Father and Thy Mother. And I think it's one of the best sermons I've ever heard on parenthood. And you need to get that. You need to spread it around. That's why we're putting it out today to you all. This is critical information. This is one of the main steps that we're going to have to take, and that's taking the families back. Fathers.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how fathers have been undermined in our culture. And he talks about how this is planned. And if you don't believe that, just go to watch Family Guy or The Simpsons or some of these other programs where they dumb down the fathers in the character and make fathers look like idiots and build up the moms and, you know, the idiotic ideas that they present in the sitcoms and things, making the fathers look like oafs.
Yep.
It's insulting. It's insulting.
And we don't even know it. We don't even know it.
It's insulting to the Lord.
That too.
It is. And it's insulting to fathers, but you're insulting a father, you're insulting the Father.
Great point.
And I think one thing, Coach kind of made this point, but I would like to emphasize it a little bit. When you look at honor thy father and thy mother, and our culture, it's like honor thy children, because the attitude is, well, you have to respect your child if they come home and they tell you the bad news, or even the laws are changing to a point in like Canada we were talking, you know, where you criticize a child for wanting to be a girl when they're a boy, or something, and you have to accept the child more than the child accepts the parents and their values. How can a child even have any values? Where do their values come from? They haven't lived long enough to establish values. They haven't even seen what right and wrong and how it affects other people. They don't know. And we're turning this whole thing around. Fifth commandment, honor thy mother and thy father. Well, a child honors his parents even if they don't love their parents, even if they're separated from their parents, by being a good person, by honoring God. And that honors the parents. A good worker, an ethical person, a person of character, honors their parents.
Amen, brother. Amen. And I talked about several times about in Rome where there was an order, the father down through the family, and how that changed. It just became like a horizontal line. That's about where we are in America today. Let's get a couple more details from Coach, then we'll come back and close out the show. Great information, Coach. Great information. Again, CoachDaveLive.com. Honor thy father and thy mother. I think this came from the August 13th show, but they got archives. You can check it out.
On the internet. Honor thy father and mother. See, kids aren't to honor their parents, aren't to honor their children. They're to train their children in the way they should go. Statistics, you ready? 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. 90% of all homeless and runaway children are from fatherless homes. 85% of all children who show behavioral disorders are from fatherless homes. 80% rapists, fatherless homes. 71% of all high school dropouts, no daddy. Fatherless children are twice as likely to drop out of school. Children with fathers who are involved are 40% less likely to repeat a grade. Children with fathers who are involved are 70% less likely to drop out of school. Children with fathers who are involved are more likely to get A's. Children with fathers who are involved are more likely to enjoy school. 75% of all adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers are from fatherless homes. 75% are hooked on drugs, ain't got a daddy. 70% of the youths in state-operated institutions are from fatherless homes. 85% of all youths in prison are from fatherless homes. A study of 109 juvenile offenders indicate that family structure significantly predicts delinquency. No kidding. Fatherless children compared to living with parents living in a single-parent home doubles the risk that a child will suffer physical, emotional, or educational neglect. Hey, Bobby, if Grandpa's paying attention, me, ain't nobody going to be molesting one of my grandbabies. I can tell you that. If Daddy's paying attention, that ain't going on. Compared to living in a single home, doubles the risk that a child will suffer physical, emotional, educational neglect. Daughters of single parents without a father are 53% more likely to marry as teenagers. 711% more likely to have children as teenagers. 164% more likely to have premarital birth. And 92% more likely to get divorced themselves. Adolescent girls raised in two-parent homes with fathers involved are significantly less likely to be sexually active. Down, long. I'm not going to read it. Hey, boys, the science is in. The science is in. And what do we see our courts doing, Roger? The courts are fighting daddies. Why? We saw with what Dennis Prager showed us in there, that it's the dad that sets the tempo in the home. Now, how could we possibly be in a situation where our children...
It's a war against fathers.
Brother, our children don't want to have babies. Let's stay right here a minute. 90% of homeless, runaway children, fatherless. 80% of rapists, fatherless. 71% of pregnant teenagers, fatherless. 63% of youth suicides, fatherless. 85% of children who exhibit abnormal disorders, fatherless. 90% of repeat arsonists, fatherless. 71% of high school dropouts, fatherless. 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers, fatherless. 70% of juveniles in state-operated institutions, fatherless. 85% of youth in prison grew up in fatherless homes. Fatherless boys and girls are twice as likely to drop out of school. 664.3 million are the estimated number of fathers across the nation. 64 million fathers. 26.5 million is the number of fathers who are married, are part of married couple families with their own children under the age of 8. 26.5 million. Oh my, go on and on and on. I got to get something else. What do I run the mess we're in, right? Is our government doing what they can to help, or is the government being a problem? Ronald Reagan, that great conservative, he's the one that gave us a no-fault divorce, by the way. He's the one that gave us a no-fault divorce. How can a child honor you when you don't honor your vows? I'll give somebody a minute to jump in here. Anybody feeling guilty?
Hey, Coach,
I got another one to show you. Yes.
Given this too, even when there are fathers in the home, they don't act like men. They're not men.
No.
They're not. They don't bear responsibility. They don't.
They've been raised by women, Jared. They've been raised by women in schools, everywhere we go. So who's going to take what? So there's some woman out here that will take care of the children. Would anyone take care of the children? Never dad.
Coach?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'm 55 and the youngest is 7. My father was born in 1914, went to school and raised by Jesuits. okay, in New York City. When I came along, when he was in his late 50s, early 60s, he was a violent drunk. My mother was a child of the Deep South, whose father was a alcoholic and a rounder, meaning he had many girlfriends. So my mother would turn her eye, and along came I, the last of 7, and I was just about left to my own devices. I hid a lot. So what did I do? I married not just one man, but 2 men, like my father was, until Steve came along. You know, so
Yep.
men in the household, but they gotta.
I want a girl just like the girl who married dear old dad. Boy, is that ever true, huh? And the girls want a man just like the man that married dear old mom. In the father footprint, we are seeing the scourge of not only a fatherless footprint, but a fatherless, misstepped footprint. It's everywhere we look, and we are doing nothing today to train children to be adults. Men train their sons to be men. We've not seen it anymore. That's what I'm giving my life to do here. My children, my children's children, my children's children. A wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children.
Amen, Coach. Amen. Heavy stuff. My goodness.
Well, yes.
And again, that's Coach Dave Live. Please, CoachDaveLive.com. Look, honor thy mother and thy father. This is probably one of the most important. I think it's the most important expose that he has done on his show since he's been doing the show, and that's why I'm playing it for you today. Instead of listening to my chipper voice, you get to listen to Coach's sweet voice. But
he has a quiet presentation, doesn't he?
He's very blunt, very, very upfront about this. And this isn't about bashing women. Okay, women have an importance. What we're talking about, what he's talking about, is that men. He's not talking at women. He's talking at men who have not done their jobs.
They haven't stepped up to the plate.
Just haven't done it. And we are. Whoa, boy, are we ever yielding the results of that?
Of course, that goes all the way back to the garden.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, Eve and Adam. But you need to understand that is the core, the center of the problem. If we don't fix the father, the natural family is the key. The natural family is the key. One man, one woman, lifelong, committed, monogamous relationship. That means no divorce. Before they got married, they didn't, as the Bible say, know each other. Biological or adopted children, the importance of it. But the father is the key. It's the cornerstone of that natural family foundation. You don't have to be a Christian to know that. You don't have to be a Christian to know it, and you don't have to be a Christian to practice it. And it's true whether you're a Christian or whether you're a non-Christian, that if you take the role of the father and you have the respect of your children, that you have given them such a lift up in life that you can never understand. We talked about poverty earlier. Look, it's not the money. Come on. You know, in those ghettos, in those cities, that they're fatherless. Fathers come in, impregnate the women, and then leave. Where's the respect? The child grows up to learn to respect what? Themselves, right? They've earned the right to be the boss, to be the man. And that's why they join gangs, so they can fulfill that fatherhood need in them.
They're looking for that. They're looking for that camaraderie.
They're looking for authority as well.
Authority, yeah.
They're looking for leadership. And again, this is not downplaying the role of the mother at all. But if you don't have that father in that critical role, your odds are just so against you. And we're seeing it. And we're seeing the variations that Satan is throwing at us to give you, oh, well, try this, or oh, well, try that, or this will work, or that will work. It's not going to work. It is absolutely, positively, N-O-T, not going to work. You have to have the father, male, blue, and the mother female pink. It does not work right either way. It just does not. Are there exceptions to the rule? Yeah. So ask God why there's exceptions. I don't understand that. But predestined maybe, I don't know. But I wouldn't gamble on it.
Sometimes just fill an empty hole, or
yep.
The exceptions are there because there's a need.
We hope you've enjoyed today's show. Call your congressman this week, talk about an issue that's important to you, and then log in what they said. They're going to disappoint you, but log in what they said. B.J. Edwards, along with Mr. Anderson, this has been your last call, WTVOradio.com. Tune in next week and every Saturday, 10 a.m. to noon. Talk radio with a sting.
Join us Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern for Last Call with B.J. Edwards on WTVOradio.com.